Thank you for joining us today for our second segment episode. Readings and discussions from my book, second book, entitled The Rise of the First World Teacher. And in this segment, we had just returned from, what was our third or fourth trip to India. And during this trip, the founder of the Art of Living, Sri Sri, had taken us to Rishikesh. And before that, we had gone to the Silver Jubilee event in Bangalore. Some very mysterious, interesting things happened. You know, take all this as perhaps, there's certainly a lot that we don't know. I certainly know that now. And life is certainly a very, very deep mystery. I mean, a number of them. Where do we come from? Where do we go? Number 3, what's going on here? Who are we? What are we? What is our ultimate destiny? And one can speak about these things in terms of words, but the words can't convey it, because what we are ultimately seeking is our very existence and the essence of that, and how to connect with that and manifest that through our activities in the world. So we just returned from India here. I guess it was our third or fourth trip, from seeing Rishikesh and being this very, very holy place, and actually receiving the teachings on healing and blessings. And, as I returned, we flew back again into Colorado. As I returned to the United States, I was in another surprise. Another surprise happened kind of out of the blue. And I received a message through Sri Sri that I should just take it easy in teaching for a while and not teach those specific courses for a while. And I was wondering, what should I do then? I hadn't talked to him. It was never necessary for me really to have discussions about these things that I was going through. Honestly, it was never a requirement. Our connection and communication wasn't on that level. This doesn't make sense. You need to go back and read some earlier chapters at one time when he came to me and he said, okay, Yogadhi, now we're going to learn to communicate without words. It's not a big thing here. Right now I'm sending this video to the whole world, and it's in the ether, if you will. And I'm doing it actually quite quietly, without any fanfare. And as far as I can tell, it's really an important thing that's happening here to help people understand how deep and profound the potential of their life is. And at least in my personal experience, what I passed through. Again, don't compare. We all have a special story to tell. And it's manifesting through us in a special way. But if there's any way that what I pass through can be an inspiration to you, to help you, encourage you to continue to do the work, to come and spend some time discovering that inner dimension and the practices and programs, that's all that matters here. Not these things that I pass significant. You think our life is long? I'm telling you, I'll be gone out of here in an instant. I'll be on. And, I was talking to this group of people here at this event this week. And I was talking about Gaia, and Gaia, the world consciousness, the living consciousness of the world. And we are like cells in the body of this world. And we need to learn to experience and live that connection with the hugeness that we're living inside of. We're living, everything is alive. The walls, the floors, the ceiling, everything has consciousness in it. And the experience of that not oogie boogie, oh, we're all one, all of that. Not on that level at all. And such a profound, deep level of reality that it's our life. This is the discovery. This is the opening. This is the possibility. In becoming one with that, you think that you've had happiness? I'm telling you, we have no idea of all of this, how much we can hold in terms of happiness and joy, not to diminish anybody in any sense, but, it can be so much bigger. And it takes its time. So you have to be patient with yourself. And comparing is not realistic, but getting connected with that knowledge, being around like-minded people is one of the most important things that we can do, because then it's like being in a big magnetic field. This, by osmosis, this happens. So I received this message, okay, I have to stop sharing that for a while, teaching that. And I was wondering, what am I going to do? I hadn't spoken to him about my experience, but as usual, he'd shown me that communication was absolutely not necessary. Wi-Fi, the internet is connected to the world. Why can't we be connected with each other like that? This is the growth of consciousness, that these things move from the realm of, oh, it's nice, I feel what's going on, to we really can have a sense of that. That's not necessarily the thinking process, but the character of other people around. Obviously, something happens to your children and family, you feel it as if it's happening to you, but we can be connected with everything that exists. So obviously, he knew that my life had taken a new turn with this mysterious insight talked about earlier, called Santosha. And he wanted me to continue to somehow do work on that. And I remember he told me 12 years early that actually at a certain point in my life, there'd be a whole new kind of practice, a whole new sadhana for me to follow, something new. And apparently some of these new, growth of consciousness is both a science and an art. Science in terms of their particular methodologies, and there's an art and a deeper mystery about how those things are energized to make the deeper experiences begin to happen. So obviously something was happening and taking me in directions I never imagined. And as many times before, he had kind of taken care of to answer my questions in a real sense before they came to my mind. And arrangements were made months back, actually, to send one of his top teachers to Colorado at this time. And it turns out he was a counterpart to me, and his name was Rishi Nitya Pragya. And I'd known Nitin, and we called him, when we first met, during my earlier trips to India, I'd met him many times. And he was one of those of you from India, him. He's very, very well known there, all around India. A wonderful being. He was one of what we call the Bombay boys, and a singing buddy with me at the ashram, the retreat center, from the earlier days, who had kind of guided me and helped me when I was trying to learn how to play the drums. Remember the story of the magic drum, if you listen to that portion? How I couldn't play, and then all of a sudden I could. He helped my wife also, after her automobile accident. There's a story about how her automobile was crushed by a bus in India, and he helped her after that. And in India years back, actually in Kerala years back. And after we arrived in Colorado one afternoon during our group practice, we were all together in this meeting, and Nitin, who was leading this, he was called Nitin there, he wasn't Nitya Rishi Pragya. There's a whole joke about that name, a secret joke between us. He added something special, to try to clear our past lives. And during that practice, he suggested that we release our past lives. We let go of this. And apparently this was time, at least for me, to see and let go of mind, because this is actually what happened. And, during that kind of guided meditation, it was like a dam had burst within me, holding these very, very, very ancient memories, and I'm telling you, our life is big and long. Yeah. This human body is not the only body we've been in. You can have a different opinion, and I totally respect that. But I'm telling you, if the universe is 13 billion years long, and this planet has been here, 2.5, 3.5, who knows, 4.5 billion years, there may be a lot we don't know. And so in my case, in a few minutes, numberless memories of this flooded through my awareness at once. It's hard to comprehend how we have traveled from body to body to body to finally becoming a human being. See, a human being is mature in the sense that we have the ability to experience ourselves as a completely separate and complete being, fully conscious, and also have the ability to experience the divine within it as actually the source of our being. And truly, the secret to the journey of living an enlightened life has been actually going on for ages. And because of this truth, we're kin, in part also biologically, to everything in this world. And that is a scientific fact, not only a kind of a spiritual insight. In our genetic structure is all of life on this planet. Ask a scientist about this in the DNA. And so as I passed through this very short meditation with blinding speed, I saw myself progressing. What can I say? I promised everyone here at the beginning of this that I would tell it like it is, that I wouldn't hold back. Good and bad, high and low, so that people can understand, not necessarily the experience, but at least get a sense of the vastness of the potential. So I actually saw myself progressing through every imaginable form, almost through huge eons. And scientists have said that every life that swims, rocks, runs, and crawls and slithers in this world is in our DNA. And during this insight, this short period of time, I know that this is true. This is absolutely true. It's a physiological fact that we are connected to all of life, and all of the wisdom of the creation of all of life on this planet is in every single cell of our body. So is it so surprising that maybe the source of that is also in our consciousness, and that the source of that can be experienced directly, not as an object, not as something out here, but as a unity in the heart of all our hearts. Okay. Is it surprising that might be the case? All these species, even the plants and the flowers and the trees, they literally belong to us and are part of us as well. And if it were possible to completely unlock our DNA and see the progression somehow in a slideshow, of all those wriggling and swimming and crawling and hopping and flying and loping and walking, finally walking creatures, you would get a sense, what was passing, at least in my inner space at that time. So seeing yourself as connected to all that is an idea in the mind. And Gregory, I completely understand that. It's an idea in the mind. But there are things that are much deeper than that. They're not ideas. The love, the compassion, but the being, the essence of existence, the I-ness, there's the capacity to transcend to that. And so in this movie, I guess, that I was passing through. I saw myself passing through these different varieties and knew with complete certainty that the hidden reality behind every life on this planet is one. Know that our human life is the pinnacle of the physical creation here. And the greatest opportunity, truly, this life is a door to the spiritual journey of evolution and back to the divine life that we are. So in a certain sense, in a few minutes, sitting with many friends at the end of this practice of this, and then also these breathing practices that we do as well, called Sudarshan Kriya, all of this came out, it was done. So, I think maybe someday Rishiji will have a chance to watch this. Silently for being a vehicle for my great teacher, Sri Sri, to help me overcome this step. There's always another step, apparently, of revelation into the vastness. So it's not that there's another step. It becomes bigger, more profound, deeper, of the true vastness of our lives in this really pivotal time in my life. So when this yogi, Rishi Nichi Prabhu, when we first met, he wasn't a yogi or a rishi. In fact, he had just discovered this lineage of Sri Sri, and he came out of an unusual background of racing motorcycles and singing in a band, actually, in front of groups of people. I want to give him the greatest respect because he has influenced many, many millions of people in India and been a great inspiration for them. And in his musical profession, he led a band in which performed at large spiritual related festivals called Garbas around the country. But racing motorcycles for him was his wild and dangerous pastime. And he told us the story of riding through the streets of India, standing on the seat, balancing with no hands on on the bicycle. Can you imagine that? Riding in a motorcycle in India, where dogs and cats and buffaloes and cars are going in there are no rules over there. If you've ever seen, you have no idea how organized our roads are compared to that. It's absolute chaos. In Indian traffic, standing on a motorcycle, impossible. And like me, when he first met Sri Sri, transformed his life. And gradually he became well known throughout the country, leading the events, Sri Sri, because of his incredible singing voice. Any of you that have heard this, you know what I'm talking about. He has it. He can electrify a group of people. And as Sri Sri's reputation grows, so did his, Nitin. I know him as Nitin. And he consulted also, by the way, I talk in the early book about the palm leaf readers, okay, and that it's a very mysterious topic about getting some information from the past, Shukadeva, from the Shukadeva tradition. There's another tradition that does that also, but he also consulted with these readings, so apparently Sri Sri sent him to talk to this guy. And like I did, he was told there are many things, including one prediction, which he spoke of. Oh, I forgot about this. I forgot that he told me this at the time. Saying that actually was in the readings that someday his master would give him the title of Rishi for his service and spiritual attainment. I forgot that he told me that. And here a little aside is maybe a point. Pragya is the intuitive knowing. The intuitive knowing. Pragya. the earlier chapters, there was this experience and gift that I was given many years ago. It was called Ritambara Pragya. So, in Yogadhi, I talk about how that just emerged from the space. And at one point I decided I really should think about saying that. I didn't really put it out in the public. I didn't talk about it in the public. I never said, okay, here is quote, because I don't care. I have no vested attachment to words and names, believe me. But I wanted to say that was behind me. That wisdom was behind me. And so, and there was something that happened where this other part of that name was gifted. And I won't talk about it now, but it came from Maharishi. Okay? So, in terms of his activity, it was not unusual at that time for maybe 50 or 100,000 people to come and listen to him do events there, Rishiji, we call him. And incredibly, Sri Sri had sent him to Colorado just at that time. And suddenly he showed up in Colorado one day. I don't think he was there for me, but because a good friend of mine who was also a teacher was going through some really, really difficult times of his own. And I'll talk a little bit about that now. And when Rishiji and I first met, he asked about my journey with Sri Sri, and I shared some of the adventure of this book and the new direction I was going through, and he suggested that I email Sri Sri for clarity. It was true that I needed to speak about some of the latest things I passed through, and I also wondered if it was time to share, also my insight. This book's full of, unusual things about this, what I'd seen about this new yogi coming back. His name was Swami Muktananda Vineyard. And I certainly felt that he had been come back again. And this was an important year for that lineage also, because it was the 25th anniversary since he had passed. And the centennial 100th anniversary since its birth, which, by the way, this year right now is the 100th year anniversary for Maharishi, and the 50th also from his passing. So actually this year right now, 2018, it's a very, very special time. And, anyway, it was at that time that I wrote this. And in the email, I told Sri Sri that I considered this new direction that he'd given me, a blessing, no matter what. Like, step aside from teaching right now, and do some of this new work. And I ask about these latest experiences, and I also ask him about, was it possible that this reincarnation, that there was. We now know that there are huge numbers of very high beings, very advanced spiritual beings. Not only this is one of them, but there are many more. And maybe someday I'll share some more about that. And this is a secret, actually, at this point, that I'd held completely private and secret for 16 years. And that child was growing up now, and what should I do? Should I speak about it? Should I hide it? And given there was a worldwide scope of this other tradition, which is actually, I'm in that same tradition called Siddha Yoga. And I was wondering, okay, if I talk about this, is it going to create major controversy? And I know now, nobody cares. This was my concern, was I going to push some buttons? Knowing so much about my own past, I saw a pattern repeating itself. And I have not been a stranger to controversy, actually. Both here and now that I know much more about some of the things that have happened back. I'm not a stranger. And in spite of, our love for the great lights of history, we have a tendency to like to keep our saints the way they are when they pass in the past. And who is to determine what is true and what is not? But the Buddhists, of course, have a very systematic system for seeking out the reincarnated Dalai Lamas. And had if you've had a chance to see the movie about all of that, which I imagine everybody has seen that, go back and see it again. Most people have seen the motion picture that was produced about the search for the Dalai Lama. And honestly, here I have no claims to make. I only feel the responsibility here to share as much as I can the secret journey that I have taken. And everybody ultimately will make up their own mind anyway. And the skeptics will follow their own nature and remain skeptics. I totally accept that. Those whose hearts are maybe of a different nature, might see something different. And we're all welcome to see whatever we want to see. Regardless of anyone's opinion, even my own opinion, I've learned true intuition. I'll say this carefully. True intuition comes from a level beyond the intellect. Beyond. I have been given I've been my own greatest doubter for decades. But I have to say no more. No more. An insight these insights could not be denied. And this is the truth of what this enlightenment, when it is. It's more than my life. And after that evening, the email I sent kind of asking, should I talk about this stuff? Actually, she came. And it doesn't happen all the time, but he came the next morning on this subtle, it's called a turiya space between waking, dreaming, and sleeping, just as he'd done actually now so many times before. And I was more than surprised. I can't imagine that he read that email, but maybe he did, about the quick response. And I couldn't imagine it was possible that my email reached him so quickly. And I've seen him, they brought into these now, suitcases, like 5 feet high emails that are sent. Many thousands he receives every day. Back he was apparently, maybe he was still looking at them, I don't know. And he showed up just before I woke, in that gap, which is the doorway between the waking, dreaming, and sleeping, the doorway to infinity, and said immediately, Yogadhi, now follow your own insight. Now follow your own insight. Follow your own. What, 6 words? So few words to summarize a life. But there it was, to summarize a life. See, in a way, he was somehow letting me be free to go ahead. That great gift of insight that I'd received from him so long ago now was apparently complete. I couldn't deny the reality. I could have now opened to I was now open to allow that to begin to guide me from my life onwards from that point. So few words, yet the love they contained was more than my life. Any life can hold. There's more love than any life can hold. And they conveyed it so much. You see, he'd given me everything. Everything. That's how I see it. And I'm telling you, there will not be a awakened being on this planet. I don't think it probably wouldn't say the same thing. And with that direction, my life had really come full circle. The same completion had happened, with Marshi. It was a complete cycle. And shortly after I received the news that Shusha had passed, a lot happened in this very short period of time. And I knew for weeks that this was imminent, and had told many of my friends that his passing would be soon. Long ago I'd asked this great teacher the most important question of my life, and he couldn't answer it. He didn't answer. Okay. This was the question that had precipitated actually the spiritual gift that I'd received from Sri Sri. And the question was very simple. Is it true that the Guru was God? Not the person in the body, not the person in the form. This tremendous energy that flows from the sun is the same outside everywhere. It's on the earth, equally the same everywhere. But through a window, you can see it. You can look out, and you can't even open your eyes to it. It's so bright. So I was asking, is the divine? Immaterial of a person. When I asked Maharishi this question, I wasn't talking about a spiritual master. I wasn't talking about him. I didn't understand that really at the time. And I knew that Maharishi was enlightened. I was asking if it was true that what I read in this song about the self called the Guru Gita, the highest spiritual scripture that I'd ever seen. I was asking, was this universal principle of the enlightened mind, I guess I'm saying it out longer, that is latent in each of us, was that force of nature in the spiritual teacher, the master, the divine? Was that God? And since that day, I've held this question in my heart all these years. You can say yes in the head, but the deepest level, there's something else. Maharishi answer finally came as I was watching actually the Mahasamadhi, the event that was happening in India of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi broadcast. It was being broadcast from India on the internet. And it marked the final funeral of this giant of our spiritual age. And suddenly the video changed, and I began to hear these last words he wrote by this really unbelievable great saint, who was very close as students, which were, by the way, all friends of mine. I hadn't seen them for decades and decades, but they were all way back when we were little kids and beginning on this. And so with a weakened voice, barely above a whisper, he began to share the story of his secret journey and how amazed he was at the life and the grace that he had received. And honestly, my dear friends, I broke down in tears as I heard the love from his words. As he said, it's unfathomable. It's unfathomable. Nagaro radikam. Nagaro radikam. These Sanskrit words are directly from that wonderful prayer called the song of the spiritual teacher, Guru Gita. It inspired me to ask my question of him in the first place. Is it true that what manifests through the space of the awakened mind, divine? And he spoke to me in Sanskrit. And I knew the translation. It was written in my heart. And with his last words, again, take these however you want. I'm not asking anybody to believe anything. These were his last words. There's nothing higher than that. That principle called the Guru principle, this principle of grace in this world. There is nothing higher than that. Nothing. And I felt in that moment with incredible certainty that now, after so many years, he finally answered that question that I'd asked. For these were the very words from that great work of love and devotion that inspired my question so long ago. And I could scarcely believe my ears. How could I deny what I'd lived through? It must be true. It must be true. So I knew that I could trust my own insight. That gift of grace had shown me again and again that these subtle experiences, they were true. And looking in the text, on verse 96, in that Gita, there was these words, there's nothing higher than that. And I'd known several weeks that Maharshi was about to leave his mortal coil. How do I know? I don't know, honestly. I just know. I know. But I knew one morning, I knew that he was out. And that enlightened mind, certainly that great consciousness, is unfathomable. And as I watched the final events from my Colorado home, and I knew Sri Sri also was personally there. Okay. I heard later he was seated beside, actually at this ceremony, the head of the lineage, the Shankaracharya of the North. I won't describe this, but this is a very 2,500-year-old at this funeral pyre, and and he arranged an honor guard for the state for Maharshi at this event, and I was told this was the first time this had ever occurred in that country for a spiritual teacher like this. I don't know. But... And Sri Sri spoke about this great teacher, which I'm honoring now, the Maharshi, who'd done good, so much good, and it was quoted by the papers in India at this time. Maharshi was an emperor, and he was an ascetic. And during my late teens, a few of us were sitting with him in Switzerland. He was being briefed about some problems in his organization movement, and he said, once you're at the top, there's no plateau. So whoever reaches the peak has to come down, and so I said something to him. I said, there's no competition for depth. And at this, actually, he chuckled. I don't remember saying this. And he chuckled and looked at me, and he said, I've never seen someone as deep as this at the time. And perhaps this is the reason why everyone, young and old, scientists and simpletons, could relate to him. And now we see with Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, boy, that is the case. Every side, up and down, good and bad, every tradition, the beggar to the head of a country. And when he met with this other yogi back then, people would wait to hear his discussions. Everyone was amazed. He would just exchange pleasantries when they would sit together. These yogis, when they would sit together. I'd seen a few of these meetings with all highly enlightened saints, and they don't talk about the high consciousness. They talk about, oh, what's happening? Oh, did you have a good lunch? I see this is happening. Oh, this is happening. The reality is, and it was a very joyful situation to be together, but they never discussed. You would think, oh yes, here's the deep truth. We talked about that, and he had, all these beings had tremendous enthusiasm, and I remember they would speak to hours in a stretch, and sometimes they would speak on really abstract principles at that time, because we weren't talking religion, because people already had opinions on religion. They would talk, the unified field theory, quantum mechanics, and the concepts that many would not be able to grasp, but nevertheless, just being around such a high consciousness, we'd somehow understand. And though we were engaged in lots of mundane things, he always maintained a great level of dispassionate love. Didn't care about criticism, praise or criticism. Very gracious with all saints and swamis, those that were critical of him. the yogis that have come into the United States have had a lot of people that would criticize them. Geez, even the greatest people in this world have their critics, you know. And whenever someone would talk about a bad publicity, he would only smile. And this great yogi, which I'm just going to end this second with, about him passing, he always dreamt big, and he made grand plans to such an extent that people would think he was nuts because it didn't fit. Perhaps this was a technique to transcend our logic, and he would, our understanding, and he would actually quote one little phrase from the Bhagavad Gita: Yo buddhe para tattva se ha. Excuse my Hindi. The self is beyond the intellect. It's beyond that. So, I thank you for listening to me. It's kind of interesting because this part actually is the kind of the ending of where we were 10 years back, actually more than 10 years, maybe 12 years back now, of this part of the writing. And so I'm going to go into new stuff. What's happened since then? There's so many really interesting and wonderful things have happened since then. And actually, it's being written now. The story's been written now. The life of your story is being written now. Right now. This moment. So again, my hope and prayer is that everybody be happy. And there's a chant talking about the sukhi, the happiness. And they say, may all the people of the world be happy. May all of, the flowering of consciousness be fulfilled. May truth be known. May we come together in oneness, in love, for common purpose, to do the work we need to do. We've all come into this life to bring something into this world, not take anything. We want in the middle, whether it's billions, but I'm telling you, there are three kinds of wealth. The money is, yes, you think it lasts forever, it doesn't. Yeah, you may have trillions in the bank account, or millions or billions. Okay, does that produce a satisfaction? Does it really? Look at all those people that have that. Are they just rolling in happiness and joy? No, they're not. In anything that one can have in that area, have it, fine. But think that that's going to give you fulfillment? It will not. It will not. Because the senses are limited. You like ice cream, but 20 gallons of it? 3 cups, you start getting sick. So that means the hearing, the touch, the taste, the smell are all limited. And what are we seeking? Unlimited happiness. A love that does not perish. A connection with what is that goes on forever. Okay. So that wealth, valuable, important, practical, but so the second level of wealth is the merit. Every smile, every heart that is released in whatever way, by your kindness, by your friendliness, by your compassion, by your reaching out. Words are no words. That upliftment creates something that's tangible, actually. It's called merit. Merit. The good works that we've done. Not asking and wanting anything in return. That creates a force, if you will, a power of good that travels with us, and has been traveling with us. Why things happen the way they happen, why terrible things happen to good people, why good things happen to terrible people. It seems like it goes on forever. It doesn't. They're riding on merit. And what we do has consequences. Maybe not immediately. You don't pay your credit card bills. They don't come and repossess your house, but eventually they will. If you don't take care of those payments, they will. Okay, it doesn't happen tomorrow. This is how. So merit is kind of that force, in a sense, that of goodwill that kind of opens the unseen doors, allows us to come into contact with knowledge, allows us to be able to understand it, to appreciate it, to practice it, to put it into action, and can burn down the weight of, if we do have a long history, of the weight of that, so it's minimal. So we just don't need to go through so much. Okay. So some very hard lessons, or they've chosen hard lessons. It's not easy to figure out. The ways of why things happen is really unfathomable, difficult to see. But, some little bits of that can be seen. And part of what I'm sharing here is that level of wisdom called pragya, you can actually begin to sense that. But more importantly, you can act to avoid. So the second type of wealth is very, very valuable. That travels with you. When you're gone from here, something travels with you. And the love that you've brought into this world, the compassion, in big and small ways, doesn't have to be showy. That travels with you. That love continues. And it travels with you on to the next journey. If you don't believe there's another journey, that's fine. But there is. Okay. And then that's the second type of wealth. The third type of wealth is the attainment. There is an attainment. Why do we go through all of this stuff? Is it developing the compassion, the empathy? Do I have empathy for people that have multiple sclerosis? Because, I'm carting my father around in a wheelchair and having him pass through. You're darn tootin' I do. And we all have unique experiences we pass through. And that stretching of our understanding of our love, our compassion, but something deeper, our connection with the divinity, that is the real. That's what's really real. That's what continues. That cannot be lost. That will continue. So the attainment is the third level of wealth. And even though, whatever may be happening, it may be shrouded or hidden from time to time, for a certain period of time, it can't be hidden. So you cannot lose that. That is true wealth. So something to think about, on this very wonderful day of the earth. Let's think of our earth. Think of this tiny speck of dust we're traveling on. Huge to us, I understand. And just drop whatever you've been bothering you. Whatever you're holding, whatever is holding you back. We're really good at grasping. We're not so good at letting go. So let go of that. Those people that cause you the most headache are often those people that are teaching you the biggest lessons, unfortunately. You guys know all of this. We're full of wisdom, and it's not my intent to pontificate about this. I'm so amazed. I'm just so amazed. So until we meet again, sorry I went on a little bit longer. And I appreciate you taking the time to listening to me about my personal adventure, journey to living a self-awakened life, about this great, great teaching teacher, this great organization, this great spiritual teacher now in the world. It's the story of the rise of the first world teacher. I believe this. It doesn't make any difference. What is, right? What is going to come up and be, we'll see. But thank you for coming. I appreciate it. And once again, I'll start again. There'll be more. There's always more to share. And perhaps tomorrow we'll see where we'll go from there. Thank you very much. Episode 19. Namaste.